Good afternoon, Niner faithful. It is Friday afternoon, and that means I am here with Jack Hammer, my faithful Friday guest. The Hammerhead Show is in full effect. We are here just a little bit late, but that doesn't matter because we are here, and that's what's important. Always a pleasure to have Jack Hammer on the program. He hails from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, covering the 49ers for that lovely paper, running that beautiful blog of his, the information for which is down in the description. Jack, are you having yourself a good Friday afternoon?
It's a good Friday because it's Friday, right? Friday means that you don't have to go to work tomorrow for most of us, especially at this time of the year. So, yes, it's a good.
Absolutely. It is good to have the weekend fast approaching. All right. So the bottom line for this show was a summary of where we are to this point, right? The offseason is in full effect. The 49ers have begun their roster construction, and it bears examination before we get into the heart of draft period, right? Pretty soon, it's going to be all about the draft. It's going to be all about how the Niners address their remaining holes going into the draft. And the best way to get ready for that is to do a breakdown of what has occurred to this point, giving our thoughts on every move that the 49ers have made and some of the remaining moves that might be out there. Of course, we will touch on the Deebo topic as well later in the program. We'll keep you on pins and needles until then, and we will definitely hit a little bit of that draft prep, talking about what are the remaining holes and which ones might the 49ers attempt to address early on in the NFL draft. So let's get started in breaking down for the 49ers those new additions that they have brought to the team. Going through one by one, looking at the roster construction by the San Francisco 49ers, and again, looking at the players that they have added through free agency, starting off with Charvarius Ward. That obviously, cornerback coming in from the Kansas City Chiefs, Jack. To me, this was the biggest move by the Niners. They clearly came in, had a priority of addressing the cornerback room, and targeted one of the players that seemed to be one of the best fits for the San Francisco 49ers, at least one of the top 2 or 3 cornerbacks available to fit within the 49ers scheme. I saw this one as a big win by the 49ers, the one splash move that I saw. What was your overall take on the Charvarius Ward addition?
Yeah, it was definitely the one splash move that they've made. And it did. It filled a big void for them on the outside of the corner. They were in the NFC Championship game just a few months ago with Ambry Thomas and Emmanuel Mosley as their outside corners. But they still felt the need to improve there. So go out and you get Charvarius Ward. And I think this is a move that could pay big dividends for their defense, because last year, as good as the pass rush was, the secondary didn't have the ability to really play tight. They had to play loose because of who they had, of what they had in the secondary to work with. And now you have a guy who really his specialty is playing man coverage. So if they're able to tighten up that coverage, that should lead to maybe more sacks, which would then in turn you would expect to lead to more turnovers. If you can make the quarterback have to throw in tighter windows, you're more likely to get turnovers that way.
Yeah, it did strike that the 49ers had to play that loose coverage, in particular on so many of those critical third downs, and it felt like teams were able to take advantage. This hopefully does give them the edge there. So I think both of us see this one as a high-quality addition for the San Francisco 49ers addressing a need. The next one was Ray McCloud, the wide receiver, kick returner, punt returner coming in from the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, this one was mostly about addressing the special teams unit, about addressing the return unit for special teams specifically. But I do think it's fair to point out that there is probably going to be some addition to the offense as well, some value that Ray McCloud offers on the offensive side of the ball as a wide receiver. So I saw this one, again, as a quality move by the San Francisco 49ers. It addresses a need, and it adds to the wide receiver room.
Yeah, this is a move that was, I think, primarily geared towards helping in the return game, because if you look at his role in the past, that's primarily what he's done, and he's done a pretty good job of it. So he's primarily going to be a returner, but he does provide some ability as a receiver, probably more in the slot, like of a slot slash light role. If looking at what he's going to do on the offensive side, I wouldn't expect him to be the guy that's taking the top off the defense or anything like that, but he's going to do his work underneath, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's not a speed guy. He's a 4.5 40 guy, so not a 4.3 guy, but he does offer some short area quickness. I agree that you were saying he's a Deebo Samuel light. I think that the 49ers could use him in that regard. Take a few of those carries away from Deebo Samuel, who hopefully is still going to be on the team at that time. We'll get to that talk a little bit later. Next up on the docket, Oren Burks, the linebacker from the Green Bay Packers. I have to laugh at this one, and I've said it before, but the 49ers clearly added to their special teams coverage unit with this linebacker acquisition, but they managed to poach a linebacker from one of the only special teams units that was actually worse than the San Francisco 49ers. That's no reflection on Oren Burks. He is a stud special teamer, but that entire unit for Green Bay was not a good one. And the 49ers managed to poach someone from that unit. So I see this as a solid addition and a good depth piece in the linebacker room as well. I like this move.
Yeah, I think if we just take a step back and look at Oren Burks and George Odom, who I think you're probably going to go to next, and then also the addition of Ray McCloud that we just talked about. From a special team standpoint, that should help the 49ers. They lost a little bit when they lost a gunner in I'm blanking on his name, Trent Sherfield. Right? He was a key special teams guy last year. They chose not to bring him back, so they did lose a guy on the outside. Raheem Mostert was one of those before he became more of a running back, but I mean, he hasn't played really the last 2 years either. So, they went out and the 49ers, if you look at their numbers, they were fourth worst in the NFL in coverage, because that played a big role in why they had the fourth worst starting position in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball. They weren't very good in the return game, which played a big role in their defense, having really bad field position as well. I mean, they were bad all around. Coverage, return, both. I think they had the 10th starting field position on the defensive side as well. So going out and addressing special teams, if those moves work the way they expect, you could be looking at wins, 1 or 2 wins, just based off of guys who nobody had an idea who they even were when they were signed by the 49ers. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah, special teams most definitely cost the 49ers. I mean, at a bare minimum, they cost them the Seattle game. And I think that you could argue they probably did cost them a couple. And I think improving along that lines was a theme. And the next addition was along that same line. It was George Odom, the safety coming in from the Colts. He was an all-pro special teamer. But also this one is interesting from the perspective of George Odom now being in the mix as a potential backup, but borderline starter level safety. And so the 49ers as of yet, have not re-signed Jaquiski Tartt. We'll talk a little bit later about the players that the 49ers declined to re-sign that have gone elsewhere and those that are still available. But as of right now, the 49ers have not brought back Jaquiski Tartt. And so you were looking at a situation where you potentially had a competition in camp between Tavarius Moore and Talanoa Hufanga. And that, to me, struck me as a poor plan, that there wasn't enough competition, enough depth happening in that competition. I think bringing in George Odom, it's still murky waters. I still don't see a clear starter for the Niners, but it furthers the depth and it increases the chances that if they do not select a safety or do not bring back Jaquiski Tartt, that there's a higher level of competition for whomever takes that spot eventually.
Yeah, that's the one piece with Odom, right? I think he started 7 games last year for Indianapolis. He played fairly well in that role. He might fill in as a, I think what you're going to see, unless they go safety in the draft, it's probably going to be Talanoa Hufanga, who I'm not super high on, but the whole safety room is interesting, and we can get into that too, because you got Jimmy Ward, who's coming up on the last year of his contract, and he would be a key guy that you would think that they'd be trying to extend sooner than later to free up cap space, and we haven't heard anything on that front. So I think they're starting to prepare for a draft pick of safety could mean, and no extension for Jimmy Ward could also mean that they're starting to prepare for life without him in 2023. Uh, so there's all kinds of different things that these moves and the way that they play out could impact the future. And I think Odom is the guy who they expect to be capable of starting, but I think his primary role is going to be as a special teamer based on the way that he responds, based on his response to questions during his initial interview.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And that's an interesting point around Jimmy Ward and not having done that extension yet. There still is the need to free up cap space to sign all of those draft picks that they make at the end of this month. And if they've yet to move Jimmy Garoppolo, if the draft isn't the day when Jimmy Garoppolo, or the days when Jimmy Garoppolo is moved, they may need to clear up some cash. And Jimmy Ward may still be on the docket for an extension. But if not, it does signal a bunch of change happening in that safety room. And we will hit that in a little bit. Next up was Hassan Ridgeway. This one to me was he's the defensive tackle coming over from the Eagles, a 300-pounder. This is a run stuffer. To me, it's DJ Jones light. A bit of a versatile run stuffer with a lot of, not a lot, a small degree of upside as a pass rusher. Not DJ Jones style of pass rush ability from the interior, but a little bit of upside. So I see this as a potential project for Chris Kocurek and a good patchwork fill-in for the loss of DJ Jones.
Yeah, Ridgeway, I don't see him as a replacement for DJ Jones. I see him more as a replacement for Kentavious Street at a second, as a guy that's on that second unit that can bring some good pass rush, but also, be a little bit of a run defender as well. I don't see him moving. I don't see that acquisition as being something that they expect to be a starter.
That's a great point. Yeah, I don't see him as that first unit starter either. That's a great point. More of a depth piece, but similar in that same position that DJ would have played.
Right, and I see Javon Kinlaw being the guy that's going to be they're going to try to replace DJ Jones with. We'll see how it works. It didn't work out very well when they tried to have him replace DeForest Buckner. So we'll see how it works out. He says he's healthy. We'll find out when training camp rolls around. But Ridgeway's a guy who I think gives them strong ability on that second line. If you look at his pass rush productivity numbers with Philadelphia, they're pretty comparable to what they lost with guys like Jones and Street.
That seems like one that could be an upside move. Again, anytime you bring in a defensive lineman under Chris Kocurek, I'm anxious to see what they're able to do above and beyond the last stop they were with. So for the Eagles there, obviously upgrading to the Niners and Chris Kocurek. And then Kerry Hyder was brought back, an edge previously with Seattle, spent the 1 year there. I think we all know what Kerry Hyder can do. Seems to be, it was going to either be trying to get Arden Key back, couldn't get him. It seemed to me that this was an addition that they settled on after it appeared that Arden Key was headed out the door. Although a little more of an outside edge for Kerry Hyder. Although he'll play some snaps, I'm sure, inside, but not at the level that Arden Key would have in providing that interior pass rush. But we know Kerry Hyder can be productive in this defense.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is we know. Well, here's what we know about Kerry Hyder. We know that he can be productive when he's working with Chris Kocurek. That's what we know.
That's right, because he had to stop in Detroit as well.
Yeah, and that's when he's been productive. He was productive with Kocurek 1 year in Detroit. He got hurt the next. Then he got the big deal or a deal to go to Dallas, flopped, came to the 49ers, worked with Kocurek again, and got some money to go up to Seattle. That didn't really work out all that well in terms of the numbers for him. And now he's back. And let's see if that relationship pays dividends like the 49ers would hope that it does.
Right. Callie Young coming in with the comment here. Kinlaw combined with Kevin Givens hopefully can make up for what we lost with DJ Jones. We will get to Kevin Givens in just a moment when we're talking about those returning players. The last addition for the 49ers is Marcus Johnson, the wide receiver coming over from the Tennessee Titans. To me, this feels like a depth signing, but it does offer the speedy wide receiver upside. He ran a 4.3 something 40 way back at the combine a couple years ago, been a journeyman wide receiver, played on a couple of teams. to me, I won't be surprised if Marcus Johnson doesn't make the final 53-man roster, but I also believe that it ensures or insulates the 49ers at a position where they just don't have that many bodies, right? They have Ray McLeod added to their top three in Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, and Jawan Jennings.
Yeah, you're talking about Marcus Johnson?
Marcus Johnson.
Yeah, I like this signing. I do. Johnson is a guy who hasn't, he's played a lot of snaps. He doesn't have a lot of targets. They're whatever. They're so. But when you look at what he's done, he has 51 receptions in his career. Of those 51 receptions, 41 have either gone for a first down or a touchdown. So when the ball gets into his hands, he makes plays. So I see him as a guy who can be a really good. He's a really solid replacement as your fourth receiver, taking the place of a guy like Trent Sherfield. He's an upgrade over Sherfield for that role.
I agree with that. I saw him as an upgrade over Sherfield as well. Maybe not on the return team, but they already, not the return team, but the coverage units. But the 49ers already addressed the coverage units with some of the other free agency additions. So to me, when I summarize the offseason free agency additions, to me, they addressed a very key need at the cornerback one spot. That to me was, it wouldn't have been a top three need for me, but I acknowledge that it makes the team substantially better having addressed it right now. And then I believe that they did address what I believe to be a top need for the 49ers in addressing a subpar special teams. Again, both focused on the coverage and return units. We haven't addressed the touchback issue, unfortunately, but until we decide to move on from either our punter or kicker, I think that is just going to be something that we deal with. Robbie Gould is a little bit older and doesn't put it into the end zone all that often on kickoffs. And Mitch, for the leg that he has on punts, doesn't seem to have that same cannon on the kickoffs. And so I think you had to improve the coverage units because you're going to have some runbacks. And so you got to be able to tackle on special teams. And I thought they did that.
Yeah, I definitely do. And that's, like you said, the Johnson one doesn't help him at all because he almost doesn't play any special teams in his career. But they definitely tried to improve that, and we'll see how it works out. I think that it should be better. And also the addition in the coaching staff of a new special team coach. Again, another possibility or reason to believe that they might be better in that area.
Yes, most definitely. All right, we are going to get in to the returning players for the 49ers. And we'll keep this brief because we know that you're familiar with all of these players, but there are some lesser known names that could end up playing a role for the 49ers. So first one back for the 49ers, offensive lineman Jake Brendel. To me, this is added depth along the offensive line, which is critical, but it also gives them some flexibility at the center position, bringing someone back that's familiar with the offense that can back up Alex Mack or whomever if there is some catastrophe where Alex Mack turns out he's not coming back for this season. I thought that was a quality offensive line depth piece to bring back.
For sure. Yeah, you definitely need to have that backup there for him. That's definitely a solid re-signing.
Yeah, no doubt. Cornerback Darqueze Dennard, brought him back on a one-year deal. To me, this is just depth at corner. I think if you continue to add to that room, you could see Darqueze Dennard getting bumped off the 53. But again, you got to fill out the roster. You got to have bodies in camp. So to me, this one was just a depth piece. And then I'll lump in Ross Dwelley, right? Bringing back depth at tight end, probably going to fill that third tight end spot. He had lost that backup tight end spot by the end of the year last year. So both of those to me strike me as depth pieces for the 49ers in their respective rooms.
Yeah, Dennard's a guy that they're bringing in to have some competition at the nickel corner, right? Because that's his role primarily. He's not going to be on the outside. I think they expect him to be filling in. They need him. Dante Johnson's going to be bouncing all over the place because he can play pretty much anywhere in the secondary. Diamondor Lenore. Those are your three guys that right now the 49ers have that can play in the slot. 49ers have won with two of them. Darqueze Dennard and Dante Johnson started week 18 for the 49ers in that win in Los Angeles. Not that you want to have those guys be your starters throughout the year, but it's solid depth. And then you're right on Ross Dwelley. I think Dwelley is a guy who has really good hands, just doesn't run very well with the ball after the catch.
Right.
and it's going to be interesting to watch the battle, I think, between him and the other two that are kind of at the bottom of that, Jordan Matthews and blanking on the name of the gentleman that they signed last year from Tampa Bay. So those are I think he's going to have a battle for that third spot.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, and interesting to see if the 49ers attempt to address the second tight end spot and potentially push all of those candidates off of the 53-man roster if they plan on holding on to Charlie Warner as the second tight end or the blocking tight end. And then we've got the return of Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. To me, this one was a core signing for both the linebacker room as depth there, but also as a very sure tackler on the special teams unit. That was one of the gentlemen that had the most, if I'm not mistaken, special teams tackles for the 49ers. So bringing him back was a key move, in my opinion.
It was. And who was that name again? I'm sorry. Was that Tarvarius Moore? Is that you said?
No, that was Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, linebacker.
Yeah, well, the good piece with Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles is he also did a good job of filling in it as a linebacker when called upon. So he's a solid player. So their linebacker level, the guys that they have at that level are pretty darn good. They're pretty well set with Fred Warner and Azeez Al-Shaair as your top two. Flannigan-Fowles is there, Dre Greenlaw. And then, as you said earlier, the Oren Burke signing. So that linebacker room is pretty stacked.
I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. And then we got three defensive linemen returning. We got Kevin Givens, Maurice Hurst, and Jordan Willis. This is definitely, some of the depth pieces for the San Francisco 49ers. Maurice Hurst obviously did not get the opportunity to really contribute last year. So that to me becomes a little bit of a question mark. But the most exciting of the three would be, in my opinion, Jordan Willis, as I saw him to be one of the more ascending players for the 49ers along that defensive line. Clearly had that key block in the Green Bay Packers game. Of the three returning, I had high hopes for Kevin Givens last offseason. I didn't quite see from him what I had hoped. So to me, of these three, the one I'm most excited the Niners brought back was Jordan Willis.
Yeah, Jordan Willis really came on last year in the second half of the year. He missed some time at the beginning due to the suspension for PEDs and whatnot. So it took him a little bit of time in the season to get going. He had a pretty strong camp and strong preseason, I believe. But it just took him a little bit of time to get back in the groove after sitting out so much time. And, at the end of the year, he was performing at a decent level. I think he's a solid guy to come off the edge of the backup. Definitely. The other two, Givens, I think, is pretty solid in the middle. We'll see what happens with Hurst. He was injured so much last year. He didn't really impress because he just didn't have very many reps. So we'll see what they have in him. If he's able to become the guy that everybody thought he was going to be when the Raiders originally drafted him. A lot of people were excited about his potential.
Yeah, last offseason, there was a lot of excitement around the 49ers bringing him in. It just didn't materialize because of that injury situation. Then you have the return of Dante Johnson. To me, depth piece, but he is the Swiss Army knife of the secondary. You mentioned the fact that he was starting in Week 18 against the Rams. He contributed in the playoffs. He did everything that was asking of him. He becomes sort of the butt of some jokes from 49er faithful because of the length of time that he has been within a backup role for the 49ers and the number of times he has been on and off of the freaking roster over and over again. But there's a reason that the Niners keep bringing him back, and that's because of his consistent level of play. That floor that he has may not have an incredibly high ceiling, but he's a high floor, low ceiling type of guy where he can contribute, and he can contribute at so many positions in the backfield. So it felt like a great depth signing. Not anything that's going to be a splash, but is a solid depth signing for the 49ers.
Dante Johnson. Yes, sir. You're talking, yeah. That's a really good. It's an interesting one because he is kind of the butt of jokes, right? As far as Dante Johnson's years 2040 and 49ers have re-signed Dante Johnson, right? But that aside, it's one of those things where last year without Dante Johnson, they might not make it to the NFC Championship game. I know, they had the block, which is a big piece, but on top of that, he was able to, do a really good job out at corner because he was starting that game. in the Week 18 game to get him into the playoffs. He started at nickel and then finished the game at safety after Jaquaski Tart went down. So there's plenty of things to like about Dante Johnson. He's not a guy that you're gonna get overly excited about, but he's also one of those guys that you can bring in and know that he's going to be able to be a pro, and he's way better than what they put out there in 2020 with guys like Brian Allen and stuff like that. When they so the depth on that outside has definitely jumped up in the last 2 years. Let's put it that way.
Yes, it has. You do not want to turn to Brian Allen in a pinch. Much better to have Dante Johnson. And then lastly, running back Jeff Wilson Jr. was another returning individual for the 49ers. Again, to me, depth in that running back room, but also 1 year further removed from that injury. So I would expect to see just a little more pep in his step coming in from Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yeah, well, Wilson Jr. is a guy who, he didn't really impress last year a whole lot as a runner. I think one of the biggest pieces that they used him and the way they used him last year in the second half was really kind of as the fullback for Deebo Samuel. It seemed like he was often the guy that would be in the backfield along with him, and you see him leading Samuel on sweeps and things like that. So when you look at that room, I don't think the room is going to change. They're going to add another running back at some point. They're not going to go into camp with only 4 guys. So they're going to be adding some guys there. And so I have a feeling that they're going to try to move a guy like Jeff Wilson or a guy like JaMycal Hasty off of this roster with somebody younger.
I see the same. I actually hope that it's JaMycal Hasty that gets pushed off of the roster because I see that third down running back as a need. But we shall see if it's one or the other. I'm sure there will be a camp battle. I got to give it to some of those in the chat. Clearly, we're fighting through a little technical difficulties with some Wi-Fi issues on Jack's end, but Ekim coming in with guns blazing, Jack. Guns blazing. Jack is using McDonald's Wi-Fi. And Bullpup believes no, instead it may be a Starbucks. But
I don't even know if it's that good today. I don't even know if it's that good today. I've got... It seems to be that the hotter it gets around here, the worse the Wi-Fi gets, and it's definitely struggling along this afternoon.
Directly correlated to the heat. That could be. Joseph 559, Jack stealing the neighbor's Wi-Fi. That may take the cake as far as shots on Wi-Fi connection. Hey, it's the life of streaming. It is, for those of you that live on Zoom for your jobs, for a fact that there are just some days where the internet does not cooperate with you and you got to power through it. And that's exactly what we do here on this show. We power through. All right. So those are the returning players, save for the restricted free agents and exclusive rights free agents, which return to the 49ers some key players. These to me are bigger, not moves, but bigger players to keep on the roster for the 49ers. You obviously have Azeez Al-Shaair, a second-round tender for nearly $4 million. To me, he's the second best linebacker in an already stacked linebacker room. I was thrilled to see that the 49ers tendered him at a level that basically ensured, in my mind, that he'll be back. I can't imagine another team both negotiating a new deal with Azeez and wanting to compensate the 49ers with a second-round pick.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that's somebody who the 49ers want to keep around. I don't see a team necessarily wanting to give them a second round to take him off their hands. The only thing I'll say about it is that's not on the positive side is back 2020, I believe it was, the 49ers gave Matt Breida a second round tender, signed him, and then traded him on during the draft to the Dolphins for a 5th round pick. So it doesn't mean he's necessarily going to be here, but I think a guy of Al-Shaair's ability should hang around at that price, especially with Dre Greenlaw, I think, going into his contract year.
Yeah, both of those guys now on 1-year deals with this current tender. I do think that there is the possibility for a trade, and we shall hit that a little bit later. Another restricted free agent coming back, Daniel Brunskill. This is a key starter or depth piece, depending on what the 49ers do. Obviously capable of starting at guard or tackle, as he has shown. Capable of starting in a pinch at center as well, although that doesn't feel as natural a position to me. Of the 3 that he's played for the Niners, I actually thought that he fared best when he was thrown out at tackle. And so I would love for him to become the sixth offensive lineman, to where he becomes the primary backup and you fill in that right guard spot with somebody that is a little more suited to that position.
It's going to be fun to watch how this plays out, because we don't know the status of Mike McGlinchey yet either.
No.
And the feeling that I got hearing Kyle Shanahan talk about the offensive line during the owners meeting was that he really likes what he's seen out of both Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore, that he feels that Banks can, they almost put him in as a starter. So maybe he's going to start at either left or right guard. And it felt like Jalen Moore is going to be a starter too. Now, does Jalen Moore start at right guard, or does he start at right tackle, or does he start at left guard and Banks goes to right guard? So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. That's one of the reasons why I'm not so negative on this offensive line, is they have some solid pieces that they can move around. You have some young guys who you haven't really seen a whole lot of, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to hold their own.
No, right. And interestingly, that sort of puts you in the position where you can neither be too confident about how good the offensive line is going to be, nor can you really truly criticize it as trash, in my humble opinion, that you have pretty incredible depth for an NFL offensive line. I believe wholeheartedly very few teams in the league have that type of depth at offensive line. Now, that still, I am nervous because depth does not necessarily translate to starting caliber, and offensive lines absolutely need to gel in place. But you're right. There are some pieces that could be moved around in this equation to try and get the best starting five. The 49ers have options there. That's not necessarily music to fans' ears. They want to have five positions freaking locked down tight, but the 49ers have some flexibility there.
Yeah, there's definitely flexibility throughout. That's one of the things, like I said, I feel like they have some strong flexibility. They've got guys who have started in the league. When we look at the guys who they have on the offensive line, who are the primary guys that you expect to be back right now as it stands, the only one who hasn't started is Aaron Banks. The other ones have all started games for the 49ers, and they started big games for the 49ers. And
right.
The 49ers, I've been successful with these guys starting, even though they're not top-line players. So, take it for what it's worth. That's why I feel optimistic about that group.
Me too. And it dawned on me, this dawned on me before I saw this comment, but I kind of like it. I have been pretty positive as we've gone through these. And I still would like to say that I would have preferred to have a few more splashes, but I am tempered in my approach to the moves that the 49ers make, because I am more optimistic, right? I do believe that this is a talented roster. I thought that was evidenced by the way in which the 49ers performed last year. To me, that's not a stretch to then be pleased with some of the moves that they're doing, in particular those that bring people back. But I got to give it to Rini. Rini, I think first timer, Rini coming in, bro, loves the 49ers. Yes, that is true. You could say that very emphatically. I absolutely love the 49ers, as evidenced by all of the 49er stuff behind me. Like, yes, I do. I'm a huge fan. That is why I do this. And though I feel I'm not being unreasonable, people will say, oh, well, you're being overly positive. Not that that's what necessarily Rini is implying there. But to me, I think I'm validated in being positive because of the performance that I've seen from the San Francisco 49ers at various points underneath Shanahan and Lynch. I feel they have earned some trust from the fan base.
Sure, I do too. I mean, I think you can, obviously, if you want to choose to believe that all the changes aren't going to work, or the guys that you haven't seen do it aren't going to be good, then it's easy to believe that it's to be negative about the team. I mean, I think it just kind of depends. If you feel comfortable to project what you've seen out of players, maybe before they came to the 49ers, in the case of a rookie, or project them based off of what you've seen them do with other teams, and how they'll fit into this, I think it's reasonable to say that the 49ers should have a really good roster. Especially, if you want to be, if you look at it like I need to see it before I believe it, then you probably are in the group that you think they need to make more changes to add more players through free agency and whatever, to get better, because that's you need to see it. I think it just depends on your point of view. And I think that it's important to understand that when you're looking at guys from year to year, there's always projections of what they're going to do. The Mariners are doing it. I'm doing it. Any other writer that writes about the team is doing it, and you're doing it. So it all depends on how we project it.
It does. Ellis 10 coming in. Have faith. I love it. I'm also finding out from the chat here, hello ladies coming in, pointing out that Reedy might actually have been talking about Jets Gang loving the 49ers. And that would make sense too, because Jets Gang is oftentimes in 49ers chat. So I like the correlation, and I like friendly banter in the chat as well. I like it when there's good ribbing and light teasing that goes on within the chat. That to me is a fun time.
Maybe that's actually Robert Saleh, who's the Jets Gang guy, and he's just trying to get some intel. Maybe that's what it is.
I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, so we had one exclusive rights free agent that we haven't covered, Jawan Jennings, man, the third wide receiver. To me, this is a quality third wide receiver, just such a great fit within this system, a great run blocker. Again, just feels like an ideal fit to be that third wide receiver spot. I was thrilled to know that he would be back unquestionably.
Yeah, I think this is a guy who's really strong, right? I mean, if you look at his season last year, 7th round pick, they liked some things about him as a rookie. And last year they brought him along, and he did a really good job. So here's an example of what I was just talking about. If you going into 2021, based on what you saw of Jawan Jennings in 2020, nobody expected to see what he did, right?
No,
nobody would have expected that. And so again, it's the projection of guys being able to change themselves from year 1 to year 2.
Most people, I was going to say, most people would have projected him off the roster and Jalen Hurd in that role, right?
I think I'd have to go back and look. I probably didn't even have him on the roster,
right?
At the beginning of the year. It's just, that's one of the pieces that's fun as you go through this process. And Jennings really stepped up. I think he's a solid receiver that can do a lot of things for the 49ers. And really, I'm interested to see how they utilize him with Trey Lance taking over. And if it changes the grouping of players that are going on the field at any given time. If they're maybe utilizing him in somewhat of a tight end role when they go into 11 personnel with him on the field, or, do they go into a situation where it's, George Kittle isn't even on the field because he's out there and he's the tight end and what have you.
Yes, I agree with Hugo here that I would be working to sign Jennings to a multiple year deal. I think that would be fantastic. I also want to call out, this is a great time to smash that like button, because it appears that Jack's internet is on the improvement. So that is fantastic. Hit that like button. Greg Thames is here saying, I am being positive the 49ers are going to be a better team. I tend to agree with that as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about the players that are not returning, those departures. I'm going to go through the list of names here, and then, Jack, if you have any that you want to call out, we'll talk about those. I'll talk about a couple of the key names to me that are the ones that I'm saddened by. So not returning for the 49ers, Trenton Cannon. He, to me, not a huge loss. He was a kick returner, but had lost that role. Tom Compton, Richie James, DJ Jones, Arden Key, Raheem Mostert, Trent Sherfield, Contavious Street, Laken Tomlinson, and K'Wan Williams. Those are the key those are all of the departures for the San Francisco 49ers. If I'm picking out a couple of key ones, those that sadden me the most, the one contract where I both miss the player being gone and wish that contract was on the 49ers roster is Raheem Mostert. He got signed to a 1-year deal with the Miami Dolphins for $3.125 million. And that was basically the target price range that I had on him for bringing him back to San Francisco. I understand for Raheem that it could have come down to a decision of wanting to leave, wanting a fresh start. But that was the one where I look at and say, man, not only did we lose a good player like in Laken Tomlinson or DJ Jones or Arden Key, but we also lost what seemed to me to be the appropriate sized contract for the individual, because I didn't believe that was the case with Laken Tomlinson or DJ Jones. I was very sad to lose those individuals, but I was okay not having those deals on the 49ers books. Were any of those departures for you a little bigger of a loss than others?
No, I think, I agree with you on the Raheem Mostert thing. That's definitely the track that I was on as well, thinking that about $3 million would make sense to bring him back. So that one kind of stinks. That's one of those where it's, I think, a direct result of having Jimmy Garoppolo around. You don't have the money to do it at this time. Beyond that, I don't know. There's not really any moves that I could say I disagree with. They weren't going to bring back Laken Tomlinson for $13 million. They weren't going to bring back DJ Jones for, what was it, 10. So
right.
Those were the only other ones that were big losses. K'Wan Williams kind of hurts them a little bit, but
and that was pretty affordable. He signed with the Broncos for 2 years, $7 million. So that was one where it would seem the 49ers passed.
Right. I think they did pass because he's a guy that's been he's kind of been on the decline, right?
Yes,
I think this last season wasn't his best.
No, it was a major loss in run support, but he had lost a step in man coverage ability, in my humble opinion there. Robert coming in, one of the sneakerheads on the channel, to say, hey, Rob and Jack, love the breakdowns. Keep it coming. You know we will. You know that we will. And we got a super chat. Chris Royal coming in again, sneakerhead on the channel. Don't listen to these fools, Jack. I like hearing about our Niners in the T-Pain auto-tune. Much respect, guys. Thanks for the content. I'm guessing Chris is a few minutes behind. He will get to this and know that the auto-tune is no longer, but he can take solace in having made both of us chuckle pretty well.
No, I think it's good. I think what it was is that my son was working on making some music over here. It wasn't supposed to be connected to the Wi-Fi, but maybe it was a little bit. I think that might have been what it was. So in a way, we were kind of working with auto tune over here. Yeah, it was pretty bad in the beginning, but I'm glad.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Hey, imagine that. A young gentleman not doing exactly as instructed. Lord knows I never did that as a child. I was always an angel. Always an angel.
100%.
I was not an angel. Not at all. All right. So those are the players not returning and those that we felt to be relevant. Now is the time to assess, Jack. Now is the time to say to ourselves, we went through the additions, we went through the players that they kept, and we went through the losses. And so now we have to decide, were the various units within the team better, worse, or a wash, meaning that they're basically the same. And we'll go roster group by roster group to keep it nice, organized, and succinct. I see this as we'll start on offense, roll through defense, finish on special teams. Let's start out at the quarterback position, Jack. I'll go first on these just to kick it off. I see this room, the quarterback room in totality, as getting worse, right? And that's a little bit of an awkward statement for me, because I actually think at starting position, my hope and what I'm trusting in is we will get better. It may not be immediately better. It could be some growing pains, but I do believe that Trey Lance is a more talented quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. However, I think now we have a lack of depth, because I am assuming that Jimmy Garoppolo will not be on this roster throughout this year. So my assumption is that we will have Trey Lance as a starter and Nate Sudfeld as a backup. And I think that's a considerable drop-off from Jimmy Garoppolo as a starter and Trey Lance as the backup. So I see that lack of depth there as the reason I'm saying worse. But if Trey Lance stays healthy all year, I anticipate the quarterback play will actually be better for the 49ers.
Yeah, I can see where you're going there. I mean, if we look at it as it is right now, it's obviously the same because all three guys are back, right? But I think we both can project that Jimmy Garoppolo isn't there. I do believe that it's a drop off at the backup position between what they had last year and having Nate Sudfeld be the backup. I've seen a little bit of him, and what I've seen of him so far is not a guy that I want to have starting a game for me. Kyle Shanahan's had issues with backup quarterbacks throughout his time with the 49ers. So, if they get stuck keeping Jimmy Garoppolo and that's the direction that they go, that might be better for them in the long run in terms of their quarterback position, if they can handle it in the locker room. But
yeah, exactly.
So I agree with what you're saying. If you're saying that Jimmy Garoppolo isn't here, the quarterback room as a whole takes a step back. The starting quarterback position probably stays the same, maybe a little bit of an improvement, maybe a big improvement. We'll find out, but I don't think it's a step down at all. I think it either gives you the same amount, if not more.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
The only reason I'm not going crazy is because it's only going to be year one.
Yes, year one. Swan Song comes in to give his quick offensive: quarterback better, O-line worse, running back better, wide receiver better, tight end the same. Well, I mean, Swan Song, you've now covered it for us. So we just skipped a defense. I mean, that's just not fair. You've gone through them all at once. All right, so that's my take on the quarterback.
Let's do running. Can we do running back next then? Because I would like to find out how. I'd like to ask you how the running back room is better.
Yes,
when the running back room
because that's I have. Okay, so this, as I saw his comment, I thought to myself, well, I have it as a wash at running back because it's literally the same room as it was the last year because Mostert only played 2 snaps, right? But it's really not because it's the same room, 1 year improved. And so I could see making a reasonable case for minor improvement. I'm sticking with a wash. I'm sticking with a wash. I think it's the same. But you could make the case that, hey, Elijah Mitchell was a rookie. He now has a year of experience. He is probably going to get better. A little bit of a leap of faith, but I would get it. Trey Sermon, again, he was a rookie. You would anticipate he actually gets to play this year. And Jeff Wilson Jr. is 1 year further removed from injury. To Michael Hasty, I can't make any reasonable case for why he's getting better because he's been in the league a couple of years. But maybe he does take the next step. So if there's natural progression, I could see making a case for better. But to me, the running back room is a wash.
Yeah, I could see why you would say it's better. I mean, I guess. I mean, it is a wash in terms of everybody's coming back. The only way that it's better is if Trey Sermon can come out and improve, right? Trey Sermon, I think Trey Sermon's when you go back and you watch some of Trey Sermon's runs last year, you can see a guy who at times has the ability to make plays. When he filled in against Seattle, he did fine. He wasn't the reason that team struggled. That was more of an issue with the quarterback position, and Seattle selling out to stop the run, and the quarterback not being able to make the plays. And that was even when they had even in the second half without Jimmy Garoppolo. So I don't know. I think that I can understand why, if you want to go that route, you could say it's better because you have Sermon possibly getting better. I think Hasty and Wilson are the same. I
find it interesting.
We'll see about Mitchell. The only way that Mitchell is an improvement is if he stays healthy.
Right. Yeah. If he's able to stay away from getting dinged up all year as he did last year. I find it interesting that Sermon's such a polarizing topic for most 49ers fans. You get the range in the comments from Swan Song saying Sermon might give us something. That seems to be a reasonable take, but I think those that didn't see what they wanted to see from him year one, many people feel, as Bullpup 33 does here, Sermon bust, right? Bryant Culp going one step further, Trey Sermon won't be a Niner next year. So it is interesting to see that sort of reaction to him just because we didn't get much of a look at him. To me, that's just human nature. In the absence of information, we tend to hallucinate, right? We tend to extrapolate how we want to. And so if you had a negative connotation about Trey Sermon, you didn't get any additional information, so you go further down the negative path. If you were a big fan of the draft pick initially, then you may have room for optimism. To me, it's just sort of an incomplete. You got to wait and see.
Yeah, you got to wait and see. I think when I go back to where I saw the most of these guys during training camp, I was really impressed with Elijah Mitchell over Trey Sermon because you could see it in practice. The things that we saw of him in games, you saw it during practice. You didn't see that with Trey Sermon. He struggled to gain yards, but quite frankly, the 49ers offense as a whole in the running game struggled against their defense in training camp when it came to running the ball consistently. So that's the starting lineup.
Yes. I tend to agree. James Wilson coming in. Give my guys Rob and Hammer 100 likes. They always repping Niners. Bang, bang, Niners gang. Appreciate you, James. Appreciate you. All right. Wide receiver room. I see this one as better. Top three are returning. My fingers crossed for Deebo's contract. And I feel like Ray McLeod is an upgrade over Trent Sherfield, Marcus Johnson, and Travis Benjamin. To me, that's more of a wash. But again, when I'm looking at the top five from last year against the top five, presumably this year, I feel like that's getting better.
Yeah, I could see why you would go that route. I mean, the top four I feel are better based off if you figure that Marcus Johnson is at four. I think they're better. I think Ray McLeod is a better is solid. And, he's not going to give you a whole lot. If you look at what he's done in the NFL, he's not a big play guy on the offensive side.
No.
But the other guys, the other four have made big plays in the NFL. So I think that at the top four, you're better off, and we'll see what happens. You have McLeod. Is Travis Benjamin under contract? I didn't believe that he was. I thought he was a free agent.
He is not. He is currently out. He's still available, but he is not on the team.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the only thing. They still have one position, I think, to fill there if they want to carry six receivers into this season. They have one more left.
Yeah, you would think that they may not be done in free agency or dip in the draft. There's a lot of speed there. Tight end to me is a wash. I mean, you brought back Dwelly for now, and so you basically have the same tight end room, and I don't see a reason to be terribly optimistic about improvement there. So to me, that feels like a wash.
Correct. I think it's all the way down to the practice squad guys. All five of the guys that they have right now on the roster are the same five they had last year.
I guess you could make an argument for, a slight regression in losing Embry as a tight ends coach. I hadn't considered that, but the tight end room feels like a wash. Offensive line, to me, I think you have to acknowledge it got worse. The fan base would probably go a little more towards the extreme of how much worse it has gotten. But you lost Laken Tomlinson. You lost Tom Compton. To me, not the end of the world bad. It's just that this unit does need help. I think there's plenty of depth pieces. But again, we talked about it earlier. It's about how do they all fit together in a puzzle piece to create the five-man unit of the starting lineup.
Yeah, I think you're being disingenuous if you tried to say that they're better.
Right.
There's definitely a possibility that they're going to be better because if Aaron Banks comes on and plays the way you expect him to play, as far as like what you saw of him at Notre Dame, that's going to be solid. It's going to be a solid addition. The other piece also aside from losing the players is they struggled running the ball last year against teams that were good in the middle. Green Bay in particular shut them down twice last year. And what that points back to me isn't either of the guard positions. That points to, in my opinion, Alex Mack not being able to push guys around because he struggled against the Packers. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but number 97 of the Packers, their big defensive tackle.
Yes, I know exactly who you're talking about, but the name is escaping me as well.
And he really dominated him in the game at Levi's, and I felt like he did a really good job again in Green Bay.
Yeah, no doubt. I am attempting to pull that up right now. Of course, my internet connection isn't fast enough to bring it up. All right, here is Packers depth chart, not cooperating. It's Kenny something, right? Kenny.
Yeah, that's what it was. Kenny, whatever.
Somebody in the chat will bring it. Yes. It's not Kenny Rogers, but it's something like that. Anyway. All right. So I think we're in agreement. Offensive line got worse. We'll go over to the other side of the ball to defense. Going into the defensive line. To me, it's either a wash or worse. It's borderline. To me, tough to replace DJ Jones. I thought Arden Key might have a huge year if he had returned. I don't see as much potential in Kerry Hyder. The real question is, how does Javon Kinlaw look? If he comes back and has himself a year, this line could be better, but it felt like we lost pieces, tried to bring back some depth there, but I can't imagine that we're filling in properly for DJ Jones and Arden Key with the moves that we've made.
Okay. I'm going to say on this one, I'm going to say that it's a wash, and I'm going to explain it. I think that they are going to be better as a pass rush.
Okay.
They're going to have a they're going to maybe have a little bit of a drop on the run side, because the guys that they're filling in are better pass rushers. I feel have the potential to be better pass rushers in the interior. Guys like, Javon Kinlaw, if you look at his pass rush numbers from 2020, we talked about this once before. If you look at what he did in 2020 in terms of pass rush, based off of Pro Football Reference and stuff. So we're not looking at like a win rate or anything like that, but just total number of pressures. He actually had more pressures, which is sacks, hits, knockdowns, all that kind of stuff, than what you had from DJ Jones this year in a similar amount of snaps. So Kinlaw has the ability to be better than him in the middle there. And then I think just like, Eric Armstead, he's going to be the same guy that I think you're going to hit better. I think you got better with Ridgeway over Street. And the wild card in this is going to be Charles Omenihu replacing Arden Key, because that's the guy that, but here's the thing, Arden Key, if we're having this conversation last year, we're looking at Arden Key and we're saying,
fringe player, like may not make the roster, right?
Right. I mean, he came to the 49ers with averaging 1 sack a year. He had 3 sacks in his career before last year. He went off for 6.5. Playing between Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead might help you a little bit.
Yes. By the way, I had found it, but finally, Itchy 95 came through in the clutch. Kenny Clark was what I was trying to bring up. Before that, the chat was not healthy. Presenting Kenny Chesney from Patty Grimes.
Kenny Chesney.
Thought that was clever.
Kenny Chesney is a big fan and friend, I believe, of former Saints head coach Sean Payton.
I believe you're correct. It looks like Swansong is a believer in Kinlaw as well, putting out the bold statement: Kinlaw, if healthy, will be better than DJ.
Yeah, he's been listening to me too much.
I also am a big fan of Charlie Omenihu. Absolutely believe Charlie may have himself a year. All right, let's talk a little bit about linebackers. To me,
before we go linebackers, real quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
But we got to go back to this Kenny Chesney thing from Patty, because I got to say, if there is a song that I listen to when it comes time for training camp, if you heard it, you know it. It's Boys of Fall from Kenny Chesney. If you want to get ready for football season, or if you played football in high school, turn that song on, and it'll bring back a lot of memories, and it gets you fired up for the season. All right.
Rolling through the good times with Kenny Chesney on the radio. I love it. Absolutely love working in a good country reference in the midstream. All right, let's talk linebackers. I think best freaking room on the team, in my opinion, just looking at it top to bottom. I say it got better. They added depth. They added special teams coverage. They have a healthy Dre Greenlaw, although I do expect a potential trade to happen where the 49ers look to move either Dre Greenlaw or Azeez Al-Shire. I would predict Dre Greenlaw for something like a 6th or a future 5th round pick. But I say that this unit got better with the additions.
Yeah, well, I think they're at least the same, right? They're and the same is pretty damn good. So
good.
Yeah, and yes, I would say they're probably better. Oren Burke started a couple of games last year for the Packers, right? And so to have him be your 5th linebacker, that's pretty solid.
You have started something here, Jack. Andrew Hoke's coming in. Eric Church is better than Kenny Cheeseball. And then Swanson coming in for that Jack gaslighting me now. This man has no limits. But then really, Glenn, this one, I'm hearing it in my head right now. Kenny Chesney, she thinks my tractor's sexy.
Yeah, really.
Yes, indeed. That's a good one. That's a good one. The fans don't want to hear me sing, though, Jack. That's when you got to know when to hold them. I got that one on key. I don't listen to enough country to belt those out with quite the same level of confidence. All right, let's talk about the cornerbacks. To me, clearly better because of the addition of Charvarius Ward and addition by subtraction of Josh Norman not being re-signed. I felt like they addressed their biggest desire of the offseason, and they were able to keep good depth while, again, eliminating some of those bottom of the roster players that I wouldn't have wanted back.
You're talking about in the secondary?
Yeah, the cornerbacks specifically.
Oh, cornerbacks cornerbacks specifically, if you're only talking about cornerbacks, I think it's an upgrade, right?
Yes.
They're better. If you want to, are we going to do nickel and safety later? Or are we including them in this group?
We are doing safety later, but nickel is definitely in this group.
Okay. Then I don't know if I would say I don't know if you could say they're better, because I feel like they're better on the outside. I'm not sure if they're better on the inside. I think it's one of those things where it's probably more of a wash at this point, depending on how that nickel corner comes out. That's a position I would hope that I would really, everything that I see when it comes to the draft, there's a nickel corner that a lot of 49ers fans like, who should be available when the 49ers pick, either for sure in their first pick at 61 if they stay there, might even still be around when they make their next pick at 91, I believe it is. So we'll see where they go. That nickel corner does scare me a little bit in terms of we haven't really seen enough of Deommodore Lenoir in that role. I know he's a good tackler. He's a solid tackler from everything I've read and heard and so on, but I'm not sure about him in the coverage game inside. We'll see how that plays out.
Admittedly, I've been sold by Matt Barrows and his suggestion that Emmanuel Mosley rides inside on those nickel downs and plays the nickel corner position there. It does have me concerned about depth, because then Deommodore Lenoir becomes the gentleman behind. If you had a catastrophic injury to E-Man, that would really decimate both the outside on early downs and then the nickel position on those nickel downs. But I've been sold on that formation, hearkening back to the 2011 formations. Greg Thames, just got to bring it in. He is confirming that yes, in fact, we would appreciate no singing. Rob, let's make sure that we don't get any more of that.
Yeah, real quick, and then in terms of, like you were saying, the bringing in Ambry Thomas and sliding Mosley inside or whatever. I mean, we'll see what there may be some philosophical changes within the 49ers where Ward follows receivers around. So maybe Ward's going to be the guy that plays in the slot. I'm talking about Charvarius Ward. So maybe there's going to, by having a player that can play man coverage as much as he does, and maybe you're going to see some other movement and mixing and matching around the secondary. It's going to be one of the things to keep an eye on during mini camp and training camp.
I like that prediction, and I will keep my eye on it. Chris Royal coming in, assuming healthy, RD will be top 3 minimum. Chris with the bold prediction. That seems very bold to me. I'm comfortable saying that they're a top 10 defense, pretty legit. Like, I could say that. I could place money on that. And on paper, I could maybe make a case for a top 5, but that'd be a struggle. As of right now, without finding one more edge rusher, I would struggle to label it as a top 3. Are you bullish on the 49ers defense, Jack?
I feel like their defense is pretty good. I don't know if I would say they're top 3. They weren't top 3 last year, I believe.
No,
but I think they're solid. They're
top 3 run defense last year, but
yeah, I think they're going to be a good group. I don't top 3. That might be that's a little hard for me to say at this point based off of the movement that they've made.
Yeah, I like the optimism, though. I love it. Jaguayo56, sneakerhead here on the channel as well, coming in at Rob. I think Shanahan seems to be transitioning to a younger team while keeping enough vets for stability. Also, I think the NFC top teams got weaker. There was a shift in power with the amount of money that the AFC spent in free agency that just sucked some talent from the NFC over to the AFC. So I agree with that sentiment. And it does seem to be a little bit of a youth movement. There wasn't the influx of 1-year deals in the way that there was last offseason with a bunch of those older guys able to stick around.
Yeah, the salary cap going, increasing and everything didn't play in the 49ers' favor with it like it did last year. But I like what Jay's saying here, because it's true. The 49ers are transitioning to a younger team. You've got to do that, especially when you start to pay the guys who have earned a second paycheck. You've
right.
You can't keep spending big money on free agents. You've got to keep those guys healthy, your veterans that are top level guys, and you've got to kind of fill in with your younger guys. And this is where draft picks become a big deal. And that's why, as I stated a number of times, I feel like 2021 draft was geared towards this year, and we're going to find out how good it was.
Yes, you have to have a succession plan, and it appears the Niners do. Last position on the defense, the safety group. To me, it got worse because they decided to go a cheaper route for Jaquiski Tart. I like the depth that they have at their second safety spot, but to me, I'm just not confident that a starter emerges there. I would agree that it seems the plan is for Talanoa Hufanga to step in. I am in sort of a wait and see mode as to his ability to fill that role.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say there is Hufanga made 3 starts last year,
Right?
and the 49ers were 2-1 in those 3 starts. The only start that they lost with when he was out there, he didn't have Jimmy Ward.
Right.
That was
Arizona, correct?
Against Arizona, yes. They had both Ward and Tart out for that one. So I think with Ward in the game, it's okay to have Talanoa Hufanga. I'm not as worried about him, but I would like to see them upgrade the safety room. And as I mentioned earlier, if they go safety at 61 and they don't extend, I think you're going to see this be the last year of Jimmy Ward.
Interesting. I do like that observation of him playing with Jimmy Ward, who obviously is a savvy veteran, one of the guys that's going to be responsible for communication on the back end versus playing without him. That would be a notable difference for a rookie trying to pick up the scheme. Let's go through special teams in its entirety, talking about the coverage unit, the return unit, and the kicking unit. So I see the coverage unit and the return unit both as being better because of the key additions the 49ers made. Oren Burks, George Odom replacing, essentially Trent Sherfield and Trenton Cannon, who were both special teams stalwarts. And then on the return unit, you don't have to use Deebo, but you still have an electric returner. My only concern is the potential for fumbles. But I see both coverage and return unit as something the 49ers invested in, and I would assume invested in such that it makes it better on both those units.
And that's their goal, right? I mean, if you bring in a guy that's been an all-pro at special teams, you would hope that he's going to be able to give you some improvement there, and that's the George Odom signing, and then the signing of Oren Burks, that should help there. So those are 2 guys that I think are going to help out with the coverage units. Like I said earlier, they were when it comes to coverage units, they were 10th worst in defensive starting field position. Ray McLeod helps out with the return game. He's never scored a touchdown in the NFL on either offense or special teams, but he had a pretty good average there. So, hopefully he's able to give them some help in the run game and return game, and then you go from there and you increase where you start from. So instead of starting at your own 25, which is where their average was last year, fourth worst in the NFL, they can get out, maybe to the 30 or so.
Trying to put one of those bots in a timeout in the chat. You know how fun that always is. Sometimes it feels like the block user or put user in timeout does not function as it should. Anyway, I hope that I got the bestcams.fun out of there. So we shall see. All right. So yes,
this is the best. This is the best cam. This is the best fun right here.
No need for that 18 plus video chat that they're trying to sell over there. Yeah, get that out of here. I see the kicking unit, I think, is a wash. Comrade Whiskers coming in with the Beetlejuice. Girls. Yes.
Well, I don't know if about Beetlejuice. I think he's going more Motley Crue.
Oh, yes. Could be Motley Crue as well. Most definitely. Either reference would work. The kicking unit, to me, is a wash. They didn't change anything there. Same players coming back. So that strikes me as. All right. So we're going into a couple of our last topics here. Jack, you let me know if we bump up against anything hard out for you. We will be respectful of that. But we've got the remaining moves to be had. So do you see any of these remaining free agents? These are players for the 49ers that they've yet to sign back. Marcel Harris, Josh Norman, Mohamed Sanu, Jaquiski Tart, Jason Verrett, and Tavon Wilson. Those are the remaining, although I don't see Travis Benjamin on that list, but I do believe he is out for the 49ers right now. So let's leave it as that is. Are any of those names that you hope the 49ers bring back or you believe that they're likely to?
Of the remaining free agent guys, I don't know if there's anybody that I would really there's none of them that are still out there right now that are coming back that are going to move me in any direction. Jason Verrett's a guy who you can bring him in and let him compete.
Yeah.
He was really good in 2020, but we know who he is. He's really good if he's healthy, but he doesn't usually stay healthy.
I really want him back. I've shown this on the channel so many times that people will be sick of it, but I got to get some airtime out of it. I have a pair of his 2020 cleats, so I really want him to be back on the team and come on the program, and then allow me to mail these to him so that he can sign them. Because that would be cool.
That would be very cool. There you go. Then. Okay, I am all for Jason Verrett being re-signed by the 49ers.
Make it happen. All right, we're starting the Jason Verrett back to the Niners train. Get it trending on Twitter, people. Get it trending.
I will get it on Twitter in a little bit.
Yeah. So here are the names that the Niners have been linked to, players that were available, but they missed out on. So just to see if there are any positions that they may still be looking to bring in. So they talked to Jakeem Grant, who was also a return specialist, as well as Khalif Raymond. So to me, it struck that once you got Ray, that was out. Yeah, J.C. Jackson obviously signed with the Chargers. Once you got Charvarius, you were out on that. The ones where we didn't fill anyone in, we also had MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. To me, Marcus Johnson was like an MVS light signing to me, So I saw those as like positions that they flirted with, but then ended up going either a cheaper or just different route. The ones they didn't were Chandler Jones, because they've not addressed an edge rusher, so to speak. You could say that maybe they brought in a Chandler Jones light in bringing back Kerry Hyder, but that seems like a stretch. And then Bobby Wagner. But to me, that just felt like sort of a fluky interest. It was like, we didn't expect Bobby to be available, so we talked to him, but it never felt like a true match to me.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner, there's no reason for the 49ers to spend that kind of money. It's a good signing for the Rams. They definitely got better at their linebacker position. It's a good signing for the Rams. It would have made sense for the 49ers to make that move. The other name that you're not mentioning, or I haven't heard yet, there was a linebacker, I believe it was, from the Colts. Was it from the Colts?
Oh, yes. Toure, right?
Yeah, that apparently they were talking to, and that would be an interesting one to me. In that, I think he's a linebacker kind of guy, which means that maybe they're not really sold on Samson Ebukam, so maybe they want to move off of. They want to try to save some money, and by moving away from him and going with this other with Toure, that's why I would see them making a signing like that.
Yes, and I'm going to hit those in just a second. I got to bring in Darren because it's a compliment here, and I agree with it. This is a hell of a show, Darren says. I agree. When I was like, Jack and I were talking about, content for today, and when I built out this outline, I've got to admit I was very proud of myself. I was very thrilled with the shape of this show, and as it has unfolded, I totally agree with Darren. Phenomenal show, as always, doing shows with Jack. Jaguayo 56 coming in. It's a beautiful thing to see the dynamic duolator. I don't know what the duolator is. Is that us? Are we the dynamic duolator?
I think he's saying that we're the dynamic duo. I think that's a exclamation part. And I think he might be saying later, like he's checking out for the show because
I get it now. Duolator could become a term. That may become a thing. But yes, it's a beautiful thing to see the dynamic duo later.
Maybe he's saying that we're old, so we're the dynamic duo later in life.
The aged dynamic duo. Goodness gracious. We do have fun with ourselves, don't we? So yes, Jack, you jumped the gun a little bit there, but I got it right here. These are the reported interests, but still available. So that first one was Kimoko Toure, which I had heard pronunciation of Toure, like it was all over the map, but the spelling to me feels like Kimoko Toure. But I agree. That's an interesting one. I also think, and we'll get to this in just a little bit in one of our last topics as we close this thing out, but I believe that that's the last bit where the 49ers sort of need to apply a Band-Aid so that they're covered in the event that they don't get a player they covet within the draft. To me, that other speed edge rusher is still a need. If they sign Kimoko from the Colts, I think it would fill that need, and you'd truly be able to pursue more of a best player available. So I agree. I am fascinated by that one. But the other two that are on that list, Stephon Gilmore, still available, still a slot corner, and nickel. And then you have the wide receiver Malik Turner from the Cowboys. But I tend to think that if the 49ers go receiver, they probably dip into the draft.
Yeah.
Do you have any hope for the 49ers continuing to pursue Stephon Gilmore, or do you think that's off the books?
I don't think that would be. I don't think that's a move that they'll make because they just don't have them unless he's still around and Jimmy Garoppolo leaves the team and then they have the money to go ahead and make that deal.
I tend to agree with that unless they can free up that $25 million, that is probably not something they are going to pursue. All right, let's transition. We have gone through the entirety of the roster, a summation to those watching. Amazing information compacted down into that hour's worth of content that we went through. But let's talk a little bit about the hottest topic of the day and Deebo Samuel, and specifically the contract. Do you see this as an issue in the 49ers and Deebo being too far apart? Do you think that there is the possibility still of the contract fitting within what Deebo would want and what the 49ers might want out of that contract? Just to give it some perspective, you had these big, grandiose numbers being reported. Tyreek Hill, a total value of his contract, $120 million. Davante Adams, $140 million. But the guaranteed money and the fully guaranteed money, substantially less, right? The total guaranteed for Tyreek Hill, $72 million. The total for Davante Adams, $65 million. But when you go to fully guaranteed money that they are fully guaranteed to get within that contract, it drops down for Tyreek Hill to $52 million. Davante Adams is only fully guaranteed $22 million in that contract. So do you think that there is still enough wiggle room for Deebo's ego to get whatever it is he covets, whether that's guaranteed money or average value per year, and the 49ers to still fit it into their contract structure?
Yeah, I think the 49ers, I think Deebo Samuel is worth the 120, a 4-year, $120 million, $120 million deal, of new money, like a Tyreek Hill type of deal. I think he's definitely worth it. I think the 49ers could make it work because you got to, obviously they're going to have, they have to also, re-sign a guy like Nick Bosa, who's probably going to be about $35 million a year. His deal gets done. But with Deebo Samuel, if you're only adding 4 years to his contract, you're really looking at it's 5-year commitment. But in year 4, you can release him if it's a structure similar to Tyreek Hill, for example. By the time 4 years comes up, that's when the money for the quarterback will hit, right? Trey Lance, they have Trey Lance under contract for this year plus 2 more. So that's 3 years out. The 4th year would be maybe the first year of his new deal or taking a 5th year option. We know that you can sign guys to big money, push it out. I mean, I think the Chiefs only had like a cap hit of like $3 million or something like that, maybe 5 for Patrick Mahomes the first year after he redid his deal. It makes too much sense. And the other piece with the Deebo thing, I would rather sign a guy now who is on the way up than spend that kind of money on a guy like Tyreek Hill or Deebo or Davante Adams, who are not going to get better than they are now. They're not going up. Those guys they might be able to play at the same level for a couple of years, but the likelihood of them continuing like that for the entirety of those contracts is slim, in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems unlikely. I agree. That makes sense, to try and catch the player on their ascension as opposed to after they have passed their peak. And I know some would make the case that potentially it was a 1-year wonder for Deebo, but that's not what I saw in his performance last year. I saw something that felt a bit more sustainable, maybe not at that level that he performed in 21, but that was a fantastic year that you can't always look to replicate. Slick Niner comes in at Rob Schuh. Do you have any hesitation signing a large contract with Deebo could result in another D Ford signing with that type of injury history? This leads into my question around what will be the priority in your estimation, knowing that this is asking you to speculate on this. Do you think Deebo will be more concerned with total value of the contract or the fully guaranteed portion of it? And then the reverse of that. Will the 49ers be more obsessed with keeping the total value low, or will they be more obsessed with the fully guaranteed money that goes into that contract?
I think it's more about the guarantee
For both Deebo and the 49ers?
Yeah, because that's what you're locked in for. So I mean, I would be fine with a $70 million guarantee for Deebo Samuel if it's over the course of 3 years. I mean, I've been, you go back and you listen to everything that I've said about Deebo Samuel's contract. I've said all along that Deebo Samuel's contract should be in the neighborhood of $23 to $25 million annually. Well, if you take 70 divided by 3, it's under 25. It's in that ballpark of what I've been talking about. I understand that, and as long as the cap hit is at 25 million average, cool. And when you look at the deal for Tyreek Hill over the course of his contract, the 4 years that he's likely going to be a Dolphin, his cap hit average is under $23 million. It's totally doable. And I think what happens when you have this conversation about giving a guy 120 for 4 years, they see the big number, but that's where the lack of understanding of the salary cap starts to bang us a little bit.
Right, because the only thing that counts against the cap is the likely to be earned incentives. And in these huge deals, a vast majority of that bonus structure is not likely to be earned, and therefore it doesn't count against the cap. They would need to perform at that superstar level where they hit those contractual obligations to maximize all of the roster bonuses. And then the following year, their cap figure could go up, but it would be corresponding to phenomenal performance. So you'd almost be okay with that.
Yeah, I agree.
And so do you see this as the 49ers, their highest guarantees to players that they've put out so far? Jimmy Garoppolo, $48.7 million. This is Akash put this out on Twitter. Phenomenal follow for a lot of these statistics. Jimmy Garoppolo, $48.7 million. Trent Williams, $40.1 million. These are the guaranteed amounts, fully guaranteed. George Kittle had $40 million in his deal. Eric Armstead, $34.1 million. And Fred Warner, $27 million. It seems fair to say that in order to get this deal done, they will need to set a new record high for the San Francisco 49ers as far as the guarantees handed out. But you're hearing numbers thrown out, something like 70 million guaranteed. Do you believe that that's where the target is going to be? And do you think that's about where the Niners and Deebo end up in that total fully guaranteed money?
It all depends. Yeah, I think that. Okay, so here's the thing with what Akash said, and he's accurate. Those are the accurate numbers. The 49ers are going to have to do better than that. They're not going to. This guy is a very good player. He's not going to take less than what Jimmy Garoppolo had in his guarantee money.
Right.
And he shouldn't. He shouldn't at all. The salary cap is exploding in 2 years. If you don't think that the players know this, then I can't explain it to you why, but if the 49ers are going to try to do business like they did 5 years ago, they're going to lose. It's just the way that it is. They're going to have to make some adjustments to that because the cap numbers are growing. And again, that's why earlier on today on Twitter, somebody asked me about the guaranteed money, and I said it's going to be between 50 and 70. Nice. And they're like, well, that's a pretty wide range. Well, 50, it depends on how long the 49ers want to guarantee that money. If the 49ers want to guarantee over 2 years, you're looking at 50 million, maybe 53, 55, in that same ballpark as a Tyreek Hill. If they want to guarantee it over 3, that's where the 70 comes in, because now you're looking at you're looking at spreading that out over a greater period of time. So again, that's I think that's the ballpark that makes sense. If I'm Deebo Samuel and the 49ers are trying to come to me and they're trying to hit me with, if I'm Deebo Samuel and the 49ers are coming to me trying to get me to take a deal for less because of the snaps that I play at running back, I give them the middle finger.
Right.
Really.
Absolutely. You did the team a favor.
Yeah. And if that's because I heard I think it was Jeremy Fowler mentioned that today on I saw him mention it and it was on Twitter. That, or if they're trying to get him to take less than or even the same amount of guarantee as what they did with Jimmy Garoppolo, again, I do the same thing because he's worth more than Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm sorry.
I agree. Swansong asking a critical question here. What was Tyreek Hill fully guaranteed money again? This is what sets the floor and why I agree with Jack on where the floor is. Jimmy Garoppolo is 48.7. So I agree with Jack that the 49ers and Deebo are going to be prepared to fully guarantee more than that. And then Tyreek Hill's contract is 52.535. So 52 mil for Tyreek Hill. I would guess that Deebo wants to exceed that from a bragging rights, ego standpoint, and that's not too much north of 50 mil guaranteed. So I think that that's a good starting point. And then the $70 million feels like a reasonable ceiling. But I agree that there's a lot to be hashed out in between now and when this deal actually gets done. All right, let's move on from that contentious.
Can we just talk about a little bit more? And so when you look at the 52.5, the signing bonus that he had was only 25.5 million, I believe, somewhere in that ballpark. So when you're looking at that 52 million, it's only 25 million signing bonus. It's really the base pay for, I think it was his base for 22, his base for 23, and then a roster bonus is where his guaranteed money comes from for 23. Again, the structure, if they could get him to agree to a signing bonus of say 26, 27, 30 million, something like that ballpark, whatever, but at those kind of numbers, here's the thing. If Deebo Samuel continues to play at the level that he's played, it plays to the Niners' favor. It plays to Deebo Samuel's favor because you can restructure that. So that's more guaranteed signing bonus money down the line for the player and cap flexibility for the 49ers. So that's why when we get into the salary cap conversations, it's really important to kind of understand the flexibility that these teams are building into these big deals. Some teams do it different than others. The 49ers typically give themselves a lot of wiggle room. A team like the Colts, for example, if you look at the way they structure their contracts, they don't do that. They give a lot more upfront money in terms of the cap. It just depends on what you feel like the player can do.
And the 49ers do need to be flexible in this instance. I think they have been slightly inflexible at times this offseason, and I believe it has hurt them. So I would preach to the 49ers to increase that flexibility when it comes to getting this deal done and getting both sides together. Melvin coming in, I got to put it on. Sign Barrett just for shoes, Schuh. Yes. Start that trending on Twitter, please, Melvin. And then I wanted to talk about Lee Ving. I mean, this is correct, saying, why is the assumption the Niners lowballed Deebo? And I just wanted to bring it up to acknowledge, Lee, that it is an assumption on my part, at least. But I feel that there's enough evidence to indicate that that's what occurred because of Deebo reacting the way that he has with the social media. To me, that's a very clear message of I'm not happy at this moment. This is the best way for me to apply pressure to the organization. And if I'm trying to interpret why Deebo wouldn't be happy in the middle of a contract negotiation, my assumption is that the Niners did come in with a lower figure than he was comfortable with. So it is most definitely an assumption, but one that seems to be based on, logic, one that feels like it's not a stretch.
Absolutely. It's an assumption that is based off of a lot of evidence that allows you to make that assumption,
And let me just say, good news, Jack. I just got bestcams.fun blocked. That time it worked. Out of here. Out of here.
There you go.
I tell you. All right, let's close out on this, Jack. We are transitioning to the last topic. Get you out of here. Patching the holes prior to the draft. This seemed to me very intentional that the 49ers applied Band-Aids to most of the areas that needed them going into the draft. Before free agency, I would have said I was concerned about interior O-line, edge, safety, nickel, returner, corner, speedy wide receiver, and third down running back. In that order, from pretty worried to not really worried. If they address it, it's great. Like, I would love to upgrade the third down running back role with JaMycal Hasty. I'm also comfortable if we go into the season with JaMycal Hasty there. Of those, I feel significantly better about corner. I've checked returner basically off the board, even though I still want Marcus Jones, but I feel like we can get him for his nickel ability and just have his kick return ability, on the back shelf. Do you see this as the 49ers having patched over many of their holes to where they'll be able to go best player available And if not, where do you see those biggest holes remaining on the roster? What position groups are still troubling you?
Yeah, the 49ers have done this over the last, at least with this regime in recent memory, have done a really good job of getting most of their holes filled pre-draft, which allows them to go best player available at most positions. So when I'm looking at this draft, I want to see them get a center. I really want to see them. I want to see them get a center. I want to see somebody that they can bring in that can take over for Alex Mack next year. I want to see them get a slot corner that can play over the long period of time. Hopefully,
Marcus Jones.
Yeah, Marcus Jones. Every mock draft I've seen is still there at 3 at the third round. I want to see them get a safety because again, I think that's a direction the 49ers are looking. I don't think they're gonna. Again, Jimmy Ward is getting up in age, so again, now when you start to talk about the contracts to guys like Bosa and stuff like that, maybe that's the deal. Maybe it's going to be Jimmy Ward who doesn't come back, and there's going to be a rookie that they draft this year that's going to take Ward's spot next year.
Right?
Maybe that's a guy like the name that always pops up is the safety from, I think it's Illinois. There's another one from Cincinnati that's pretty good. There's a couple of different safeties that are out there that are strong. I think they need to, maybe another edge rusher or defensive lineman just to build up some more depth in that room because they have a number of solid players right now, but they're on 1-year deals. So if you can get a guy that you can maybe plan on developing and not expecting him to come in and be a big player this year, that's a positive. What else is there? Maybe a wide receiver towards the end of the draft.
A lot of fast ones in this one. Velus Jones is still predicted to be going in later rounds. That could be an option.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I think those are the main ones. I don't think you're going to see them go, you might see them go guard or tackle. If they're going guard or tackle, it's going to be somebody that's going to, again, a development kind of guy, because I think they feel pretty good with what they have there. And I like what Lee said. Somebody else mentioned this to me the other day on Twitter, was a punter. Maybe they're going to go punter.
Yeah, that's interesting. It is the last.
Maybe they should trade up into the first round. Trade up into the first round and get a punter. It worked out for the Raiders, a couple years ago.
Yes, solid play. Yeah, so if the 49ers stay at 61, what's the position group you would like them to address? If you were in charge, if you were Jack Lynch and you were making that selection at 61 and you had your pick of all the players you would expect to reasonably be there at 61, who would be your selection, Jack?
I think based off of the value and looking kind of at the way mock draft boards are falling, because it's just that's the only way that I can look at it.
Right.
I would say you're probably looking at a safety or a corner at that spot.
Nice. Connor's with you on cornerback.
Yeah, because the secondary guys are the top secondary guys usually go earlier in the draft, right? And so I would think you're going to go either safety or corner at that spot right there.
I tend to go with Joey here in that I believe it'll be edge unless Kamoko Toure is signed, and then I change. In that case, I believe it becomes a safety. All right, last question here for you, Jack. Just in looking at the Niners coming into this draft with 9 picks and a pretty stacked roster. So it's fair to wonder if you draft 9 players, whether you're actually going to be able to get them onto the final 53, because you have a fair amount of talent on this team as it sits right now. To me, if I'm trying to predict what the 49ers might do, here's how I see it, and I'd be interested to hear your take. I think the 49ers are missing a pick in the top 120 that they thought they were going to get for Jimmy Garoppolo. And I thought they were going to have that too. Quite honestly, I thought my mock drafts were going to go a lot smoother, Jack, because I thought I was going to be able to get one more player out of that top 100, and I'm not. So I predict that the 49ers may be actually looking for a minor trade down at 61, netting themselves another pick within the top 120 of the draft, basically replacing the pick they should have gotten for Jimmy. So trading back a little bit with the first pick, and then having more selections in the meat of the draft, and then using some of those later round picks to move around and target players that they actually covet. I would guess that the Niners end up making around 7 selections and not 9. So even though I think they net a draft pick in the trade back from 61, my prediction is that they'll move around and move up to target some other players in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round where it's less expensive to make those moves.
Yeah, I think you're going to see the 49ers. They have 9 picks. They're not going to use all 9 of these picks. So you're going to see them move around the board for the guys that they want. That's what they've done in the past. And that I would expect to see them bring in, 6, maybe 6, 7 guys with their 9. We'll see how it works out.
Nice. Well, I am looking forward to it. I'm going to be there in Vegas, and man, that date is fast approaching. It is now less than 3 weeks away. Pretty exciting. We will be drifting into more and more draft coverage as Jack and I continue our Friday shows. There's just no doubt about it. That is where 49ers coverage is headed for the next few weeks. It is all about that draft. Maybe we'll have some breaking news if we are lucky. Well, I thought this was a fantastic show here today. A lot of freaking information jammed in there. We got a little bit of musical taste from the auto tune that was going on. It wasn't enough to disrupt the flow that we had. We just got a little T-Pain flair to the show. I thought that was phenomenal, Jack.
There you go. It's always, see, that's why I like ending my week with you. We come on, we have a good time. We had a good group over here in the comment section, very lively, having some fun with us. And hey, we've got some good country music tips in there too. I mean, I'm more of a Garth Brooks guy than a Kenny Chesney guy, but hey, there's definitely some good Kenny Chesney stuff out there.
I'm sure we alienated 95% of the chat when we were talking country, but a few really loved it, right? They were all over that.
Well, let's just go ahead and alienate the rest and just talk about how good Creed was back in the day.
Can we bring ZZ Top into the conversation, please, Jack? That was the very first concert I attended. Those beards, let me tell you, that was a phenomenal show. At the Cow Palace, no less. At the Cow Palace seeing ZZ Top.
Hey, I gotta, since you brought it up, I was at one concert at the Cow Palace, and it was Van Halen. At the Cow Palace. It was a cool gig. I was just going into college at the time. I was actually a senior in high school, about to go to college, and the coach of the team that I was going to go to play for calls up and he says, "Hey, would you mind going up and working security for us at this Van Halen concert tomorrow night?" I was like, "Ooh, yeah, I can do that."
Yes, I can.
So I put on the red security guard jacket and watch Van Halen. It's pretty cool.
That's phenomenal, Jack. I love that. Yes, we have got the country vibes going. Google account has come in. Hell yeah, Garth Brooks all day, baby. Just yelling. And we've got acknowledgement of legs from Darren coming in again. And even a Tom Petty reference, Free Fallin' from James here. I'm telling you, we got the music vibes going here, Jack.
No, Tom Petty, the Chris Gaines, that's a good one too, because that's actually Garth Brooks. But the Free Fallin' one, I will tell you this. If you ever go skydiving, they will charge you more money to add Free Fallin' to your video than any other song.
I bet they do. I bet most people just pay it anyways because it's a perfect freaking song to have to your free falling video. Absolutely. Classic. Well, Jack, I'll get you out of here. I appreciate you, as always, being on the program. We'll be back on your channel on Monday. As I said before in the show, down below in the description of this video is all of the information that you need in order to give this man your follows. Go and follow him on Twitter to get your regular updates of news if you're okay with 49ers Twitter and that rabid space that it is. Follow him, subscribe on YouTube, and bookmark that page for the Santa Rosa Press Democrat where Jack's writing in that blog takes place. Phenomenal content as always. Jack, such a pleasure having you on, my friend.
Yeah, always. Thank you for having me. Make sure you're following Rob if you're not already there. And if you could do it for myself, that'd be awesome too. I'm trying to catch this guy.
Amen to that. I mean, don't let him catch me, but amen to that. Raphael 5629er Sneakerhead here on the channel says, hit the like button, everyone. On your way out, hit that like. I will try to do a call-in show this weekend. Jack, do you have anything going on your channel this weekend, or will it be Monday for that new content?
I will probably be going live a little bit later just to go over a couple of things from today.
Beautiful. That's the reason to follow both of us on Twitter, because you get those updates about the unscheduled programs. It's what it's all about. All right. You know the drill, Niner faithful. Until next time, cheers.